Turn heads and bring the hype with a custom hype chain from Lotwin. Perfect for youth sports, fantasy football, or just flexing your pride. Go to Lotwin.com, use the promo code TCCPOD for 10% off your order. That's Lotwin.com, promo code TCCPOD for 10% off. Get your custom hype chain and get hype with Lotwin. What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for July 25th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Feel Good Friday edition of the podcast. We made it. This was a long week. I'm not sure why, but extremely long week, but we made it to Feel Good Friday. And as we always do, we have big shows on Friday. Phil's back in action tonight up in New York to take on the Yankees. Taijuan Walker on the mound for the Phillies tonight. Ranger takes the mound tomorrow, and then Zach Wheeler on Sunday. They come in half game back of the Mets for the division. Let's get ready. It is pennant race season, so let's go Phillies Yankees tonight. Trade rumors are running wild, and who knows where they're going to go with this. I mean, I feel like every day there's a new player linked to the Phillies. So we're just going to have to play it out and see how it goes. But the first domino in the trade deadline has fallen. The Mariners made the first move, trading for Josh Naylor from the Diamondbacks. So we are in trade deadline season. The trade deadline is less than a week away. But like I said, these rumors are running wild on everybody. So what are the Phillies going to do? We will find out hopefully this weekend. Day 2 of Eagles training camp. Not a whole lot to report from that. I think the big story was Jordan Davis spoke to the media, and he looks outstanding. I saw a video of him practicing, too. He looks like he's quicker. Dropped 26 pounds, talked about being 25 now. Your body starts changing, and you can't do the same things you used to when you're young. And Jordan, I agree. Wait till you get to 40. But he says he feels great. They gave him a weight range to get into. He got to the lower end of that and basically said as long as he stays in the 330s, he feels confident that he can play at his best. But he looked phenomenal just in the couple video clips I saw of him on the field. So I think he's poised for a breakout year. And I think, like I said, they're going to need him. But these guys are all coming in with the right mindset. This feels totally different than what it did in 2018. And I guess 2018 was different because you had questions about Carson's knee, who's going to start the season, will he be back in time? But it's good to see these guys all coming in. Landon Dickerson said, you know what? 2024 is in the past. They're all with the right mindset. I love this. And for all of the Sirianni haters out there, this is a testament to the coach who has them buying what he is selling. But Jordan Davis looks outstanding. Jahad Campbell practiced again. Now, I don't know how much stock you put in this, but I do follow Elliott Shore Parks on Twitter, listen to him on the radio. Don't agree with a lot of his takes, but he's one of the guys that's there, and I think he's very tedious and thorough with his notes. He seems to think if there was a game this weekend, Jahad could play in that game, so that certainly bodes well as we gear up for Thursday Night Football in a few weeks. And then Vic Fangio spoke to the media. The big takeaway for me was that he was pleasantly surprised that Jahad Campbell was able to practice. But Quinyon Mitchell is playing on both sides of the field, and it seems as though he could be a candidate to shadow a specific receiver for a team, which I think a lot of the better, outstanding, elite cornerbacks do that. So it's good to see that they're giving him that responsibility and letting him try. But that was it. Like I said, it was not a lot of big stories coming out of Eagles training camp yesterday, but we will continue to give you an update every time we get some news. The Flyers had some news yesterday, and I don't know what this means, if it means anything, because they did not tender him an offer and let him go, be an unrestricted free agent. But Carter Hart, with all the sex scandal mess with Team Canada in Canada, like the court cases and everything like that, he was found not guilty. So this is one of those things that are worth watching, whether or not Danny and Keith feel that they should offer to bring him back, whether it's just better to cut ties, because there's still questions about whether the NHL is going to give them some sort of punishment or what. There's still within 30 days. The prosecutors can still file an appeal. So there's still more moving pieces to this, but I just found it was interesting. And again, I prefer maybe to just let everything play out first and see, especially with a rebuilding team. However, if there's no appeal and in the court of law he was found not guilty, then I mean, I think it's worth looking at. But again, only if it fits into your future plans. So that a little bit of Flyers news here on a Friday. And then before we get into housekeeping, I'd be remiss if I did not mention this. If you're someone who is around my age, my generation, then we suffered a big loss yesterday when Hulk Hogan passed away. And you know that he meant a lot to a lot of people my age, myself included. One of my heroes growing up, was very into wrestling. And I mean, to this day, I still call everybody brother. And it's in large part due to Hulk Hogan. In my college days, I had a little bit of time there where have a few drinks at the end of the night, rip off my t-shirt, do my impression. If you've been there for that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it was sad. I don't necessarily usually get overly emotional really about anything, but when it comes to specifically like celebrities passing away, but this one hit different, kind of liken it to when I was a kid and Jerome Brown passed away, back in 2009 when Harry Callis passed away. It was just something I felt like a part of my childhood sort of passed away. Did have the opportunity. There is a Philly sports tie here. Hawk lived in the Tampa Clearwater area. Did get a chance when we were down in spring training to go have lunch at Hogan's Hangout, his bar down there. We just missed it by a day because I guess they did karaoke on Monday, so we just missed it by a day. But I think, and this is one of those things we could debate if you want to hit me up on any of my socials or anything like that, but I think you need to put Hulk Hogan on the 1980s Mount Rushmore celebrity list. And I was thinking about this, and really off the top of my head, I think you got Hulk Hogan, Michael Jackson, Madonna, and then maybe Eddie Murphy. I debated Michael Jordan, but he was in that weird time frame where it overlapped into the 90s. But really, I mean, who else are you going to put there? I think you go Madonna, Michael Jackson, Hulk Hogan, and Eddie Murphy maybe. But that's just how big of an impact both for wrestling and just culturally Hulk Hogan had. Now, in his life, as with most people, he wasn't perfect. He had his warts. We all do. I think a lot of times we're really quick to cancel culture and not give somebody a chance to change. I talk on Tuesdays all the time about giving folks the opportunity to learn from your mistakes. And I think it would be fair to say Hulk Hogan made his fair share of mistakes. Terry Bollea, the man, made his fair share of mistakes. But I think we're too quick to judge and cancel culture and everything. But I don't want to get into that only because, like I said, I mean, I felt for kids my age, there was a John Cena-like, and there is no John Cena without Hulk Hogan, where everybody wanted to be Hulk Hogan. And I think it just meant so much to me as a kid. And like I said, we grew up in Philly sports. I've mentioned it so many times on this podcast how pitifully brutal the Philly sports teams were when I was a kid. So, of course, Hulk Hogan, I'm going to gravitate toward that. He was the champion, the biggest name in the world, the icon, the immortal Hulk Hogan. A sad day indeed. But one quick note, just to how much it meant to me was, it must have been like 7 or 8. We went to Sesame Place, and this was the time during the build up to WrestleMania 2 when he fought or wrestled King Kong Bundy. And we saw King Kong Bundy, who was visiting Sesame Place with his friends. His family. He was waiting in line to grab a soda. And I remember going to my dad. I was like, "Is that King Kong Bundy?" My dad's like, "Yeah, I think it is." And he was like, "You should go over and say something to him." I'm like, "What am I going to say? Why did you break Hulk Hogan's ribs?" And he's like, "I don't know." And my dad, to his credit, played along with the whole game. He's like, "I don't know if I'd say that unless you want your ribs broken. He might get mad and slam me on the table and give you an Atlantic City avalanche." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." All right. So I mustered up the courage to go over, and I remember I was like, "Excuse me, sir, are you King Kong Bundy?" He's like, "I sure am," and shook his hand. I just remember his hand being so massive. I was like, "Nice to meet you," and walked away. And then, of course, it was the first celebrity I ever met. And I remember, why didn't I stick up for Hulk Hogan? And like, why didn't I say, "Why did you do that to Hulk Hogan? You're going to lose. He's going to come back. You'll see." And my dad, I just remember him laughing about it, keeping up the kayfabe and making sure I bought into it. But Hulk Hogan, like I said, I love that story because like after the fact, I'm like, man, I should have stuck. And that's just to me how much he meant as a kid, as a hero, as someone I looked up to. It was truthfully one of the ways my parents got me to go to bed, say my prayers, eat my vitamins, and not sit on the couch and play video games all the time. They're like, "Well, Hulk Hogan." So, like I said, an icon was lost yesterday. The Philly sports tie, like I said, he was a regular at Philly spring training games in Clearwater. There's videos I saw floating around yesterday of him doing pump-up videos for Flyers. He's done stuff for the Eagles. So a sad day for all of us, specifically people in my generation. So rest in peace to Hulk Hogan. Condolences to the Balea family. And to truthfully, anybody who was friends with him, who were touched by him, and condolences to all of you because we all feel it. But Hulk Hogan passes away. And like I said, I would love to know your thoughts because I was thinking, and I know this is a Philly sports and I'm taking a lot of time on this, but that's just to me how much that guy meant to me. But he has to be on the 80s Mount Rushmore of celebrities. Like I said, it's got to be Michael. It's got to be Madonna. And then Hulk Hogan, I think, has to be number 3 on that list. And then the fourth one, I struggled to find one. Maybe Eddie Murphy. So let me know your thoughts on that. Let's have a good discussion here on a Friday. But rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. You will be missed, brother. And what you going to do when this day in Philly sports history comes looking for you. All right, enough of that. All right, be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok, on Instagram at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont, and continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. Somehow, I guess with the new clips, like numbers are going through the roof this week. So thank you. And if you are new, welcome. We're glad to have you. I'm still posting highlights on my social media, including Facebook and LinkedIn. So be sure to check that out. Don't forget, we're slowly winding down our greatest individual season in Philly sports history tournament. That will finish up this week. And then, of course, on August 1st, we start the top 5 for the first 25 years of the century. Give you my top 5 list for a variety of Philly sports related things. So stay tuned for that. And then kind of a fun note for this weekend. I'll recap some of it on Monday when we rewind the weekend. But the Savannah Bananas are in town tomorrow and Sunday. I was able to snag tickets for Sunday. Looking forward to that. But a lot of fun. And I know I talked about it on here before, I believe. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's not real baseball." No shit, it's not real baseball. It's not meant to be real baseball. It's like going to a Globetrotters game and saying it's not real basketball. It's entertainment. And I'm looking forward to it. My kids love it when the guy does the flip and catches the fly ball. I'm anxious to see which big former Phillies and celebrities come out for it. So an exciting time, but I'll have a full recap on that on Monday. All right, yesterday's trivia answer. We talked about Von Hayes hitting the inside the park home run off of Nolan Ryan. And I said, who were the 5 players that the Phillies traded to get Von Hayes? That would be Manny Trillo, the MVP of the 1980 NLCS and fan favorite, George Vukovich, Julio Franco, who played till he was like 85. Not really, but Jerry Willard and Jay Baller. Not necessarily guys that lit up the world, but Manny Trillo was at the end of his career. Vukovich, Willard, and Baller were kind of journeymen. Although Vukovich did have some key hits for the Phillies in the 80 postseason. And then Julio Franco, who was one of those guys, like I said, who played forever, bounced from team to team. So it's hard to say if they would have kept him, whether or not he would have been in the Phillies' long-term future. But those are the 5 guys. Von Hayes for Manny Trillo, George Vukovich, Julio Franco, Jerry Willard, and Jay Baller. This day in Philly sports history is proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network, a growing community of diehard fans turning their sports passion into something special. Whether you're looking for unique shows, want to launch your own podcast but don't have the time, or need production services, the ClashingConferences.com has everything you need. Explore fan-driven content, become a member, or tap into their media services to level up your brand. That's ClashingConferences.com, where fans' voices get heard. All right, July 25th. Let's go back to 2009. And on this day in 2009, almost 2 years to the day after losing their 10,000th game in franchise history to the Cardinals, the Phillies were taking the Cardinals on once again at Citizens Bank Park. This time they beat the Cardinals 14-6 for their 9,000th win in franchise history. Jimmy Rollins and Shane Victorino went back-to-back in the 6th inning. Jimmy hit a grand slam, and then Shane followed up with a solo shot. They scored 5 runs in the 6th and then 6 runs in the 7th to break the game open. And if you're keeping score going into tonight's game against the Yankees, the Phillies have 10,265 wins in franchise history, which I guess isn't too bad considering you've been playing baseball since 1883. And then fast forward to 2015. The Phillies, who were mired in a 99-loss season, this was sort of the tail end of that golden era of Philly baseball. Trade rumors were swirling around Cole Hamels, who at the time had a solid contract with the Phillies and was by far their most tradable asset to replenish the farm system that, quite frankly, and I'll get more into that another time. And you know how I feel about it, that Ruben completely wiped out, but he went for it. And I have to give Ruben credit for that. I'm not going to wait till later. I'll give Ruben credit for going for it. But anyway, Cole Hamels was on the mound that day for the Phillies. Out in Wrigley Field, they beat the Cubs 5-0, and Cole was absolutely outstanding. Struck out 13, walked 2, gave up no hits. He walked his first batter and then settled in and pitched himself a no-hitter, 13th in Phillies team history. Ryan Howard homered that day, so it was kind of like a turn-back-the-clock type feel. Fortunately, unfortunately, depending on how you wanted to look at it, this was Cole Hamels' last start with the Phillies as he was traded to the Texas Rangers to help replenish some of that bullpen for the Phillies. But what a way to go out for Cole Hamels. He's the 3rd pitcher in Major League Baseball history to be traded for his next start after pitching a no-hitter. But one of the all-time greats for the Phillies, the MVP of the 2008 NLCS, 2008 World Series, number 6 all-time in the Phillies with wins, number 3 in strikeouts, and a fitting end to one of the greatest pitchers, homegrown pitchers, I might add, in Phillies history. On this day, Cole Hamels pitched a no-hitter in his final start as a member of the Phillies. Now you can catch Cole on the Sunday broadcast for the Phillies, and I believe they're having a special, I don't know if it's tonight or tomorrow, kind of commemorating that no-hitter for Cole in his last start. But Cole Hamels pitched a no-hitter on this day 10 years ago. Hard to believe that was 10 years ago at this point in 2015 as the Phillies beat the Cubs in 5-0 in Cole Hamels' last start. Some other milestones on this day for the Phillies. In 1980, Mike Schmidt hit 2 home runs in Game 1 of a doubleheader against the Dodgers. The first home run put him past Del Ennis to become the Phillies' all-time home run leader. So Mike Schmidt had a lot of home runs left in him after he became the Phillies' home run leader. Will anybody ever get to 548? But that does lead to today's trivia question. And it's trade deadline season. And who knows what the Phillies are going to do. But there was a time, like I said, Ruben Amaro was wheeling and dealing. So which future All-Star and World Series champion was a part of the trade? And this was an off-season trade, not so much a trade deadline trade. But which future All-Star and World champion was a part of the trade that brought Roy Halladay to the Phillies from Toronto? Which I always forget that this dude started in the Phillies organization. So there you go. What All-Star and future World Series champion was a part of the Roy Halladay trade?
It's time for Fridays with AI, where we ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. Every Friday only on This Day in Philly Sports History.
That's right. It is Friday. Don't think we forgot. We spent Fridays with AI. And we're going to continue on the trade deadline sort of path. Fast approaching, less than a week away. We talked about Ruben, who wheeled and dealed. And for all anybody wants to say about Ruben Amaro Jr., I went on a rant earlier this week. I need Dave Dombrowski to channel that inner Ruben Amaro. You need to go all in. And Ruben Amaro was not afraid to go all in. But let's go back to 2009. And in 2009, he traded for Cliff Lee, was a big part of them making a run back to the World Series. And he was outstanding in the World Series, specifically Game 1 of that game series against the Yankees. But then that offseason, they traded him and then traded for Roy Halladay. Now, what they traded for Halladay had nothing to do with the picks. So it was sort of like a, let me get some things for Cliff Lee, and then I'll trade these pieces to Toronto for Roy Halladay. And I think a lot of people kind of confuse that, myself included, thinking he made that trade and then sent those prospects. They were 2 sets of prospects. So in a alternate reality, which I asked AI to create, the Phillies could have kept Halladay and Lee for the 2010 season. And I said, AI, what would have happened had the Phillies had both of those pitchers for the 2010 season? Because Cliff Lee never wanted to leave Philly in the first place. He said he would have stayed for less money to stay in Philly. And then in this alternate reality, he does. He takes less money and stays. They're able to work it out. They still give Halladay the extension. They still use the same package. That's who Toronto wanted, including the guy that is part of the trivia question. Farm system was still a concern, but that's okay because you'll see the way Ruben is able to navigate that. So how does the 2010 season play out with Roy Halladay and Cliff Lee in the same rotation? So your rotation is essentially Roy Halladay, Cliff Lee, Cole Hamels, Joe Blanton, and J.A. Happ. At that trade deadline that season, there's not really a need to make the trade for Roy Oswalt, which kind of saves some of the Phillies' future farm system pieces. They do upgrade slightly their bullpen. And this is the key that changes this whole narrative in this alternate reality. Because Cody Ross killed the Phillies in the NLCS in reality, our reality. But in this alternate reality, the Phillies aren't so concerned with getting another starting pitcher. They want to have a bat that can play, good pinch hitter, somebody who can go in and start. And we saw what happens when Cody Ross got hot, and somebody who can get hot and kind of pick up the slack for this team when they are getting older and things like that. So the Phillies wanted Cody Ross anyway in 2010, put in a waiver claim, got blocked by the Giants because the Giants picked him up before the Phillies did. And then you know how it played out for the Giants. But in this reality, we get Cody Ross at the trade deadline for a lot less, and some bullpen help for a lot less than what we would have had to give up for Roy Oswalt. So that kind of saves the bullpen a little bit there. But how does it play out then? Well, it makes a huge difference because you don't have Cody Ross on the Giants killing the Phillies because Cody Ross is on the Phillies. So they do end up beating the Giants behind Lee and Halladay just dominating. And then they go on to beat the Rangers in the World Series because Cliff Lee was not a member of the Rangers, who that's where he ended up that year. So in 2008, Phillies win the World Series. 2009, they go back and lose to the Yankees. 2010, they still have Cliff Lee, add Roy Halladay. They win 2 of 3. How does it play out for 2011? Well, there's no Roy Oswalt, no 4 aces or anything like that, but it's still Hamels, Halladay, Lee, Blanton, and J.A. Happ are your starters in 2011. Unfortunately, the Phillies can't change the injury bug, but maybe Ryan Howard doesn't get hurt on that because they're not playing. It's not as much pressure. He's not trying to swing as hard. Who knows? But let's just assume, for the sake of argument, AI said Ryan Howard still gets hurt in the NLDS. I still think it might have played out differently, but this is Fridays with AI, so this is what AI thinks. The Phillies end up beating the Brewers in the NLCS after taking care of the Cardinals. The pitching goes to the World Series, or the pitching carries them to the World Series because they don't have Ryan Howard. They have a rematch with the Rangers, lose it in 6 games. Offense struggles without Ryan Howard. And then moving forward into 2012, unfortunately, they all do still get super old, super fast. You have Ryan Howard, who misses the start of the season. Phillies do contend for the wild card, but the farm system is in better place or better shape. And I think this is where AI says the reality kind of shifts. Yeah, we'd have another World Series championship, but the rebuild doesn't take as long because you don't have to make the moves then for Halladay. Maybe they still make the move for Hunter Pence. Who knows? But the rebuild kind of gets accelerated because you don't have to trade Cole Hamels, and then you team him up with Aaron Nola, and then Hamels kind of becomes the old vet mentor. And in this alternate reality, Charlie Manuel stays until he retires. He never gets fired. I guess winning 2 World Series will do that for you. But what are your thoughts on this? Could it have worked out? Should the Phillies have kept Cliff Lee and Roy Halladay for the 2010 season? I say absolutely. I've always said that. But could this have played out that way? Let me know your thoughts on that. 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off of your chest, hit me up on my social media. But that was Fridays with AI, brought to you as always by Philly Goat. Go to phillygoat.com. They have a wide selection of Philly sports-based apparel. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. And they've been pumping out shirts like it's your job. We talked about the 80s. Remember Garbage Pail Kids? They have Garbage Pail Phils. There's like 3 different shirts now. Castellanos, Harper, and Schwarber. Just go check it out. And if you remember the Garbage Pail Kids, but they always are our sponsor for Fridays with AI. This one, let me know your thoughts. I think this is a very plausible and realistic one and would have led to at least one more World Series. And then finally today, our greatest individual season in Philly sports history. We have our first Final Four participant. Steve Carlton from 1972 upset the number 1 seed Mike Schmidt from 1980 with 55% of the vote. Steve Carlton is the Phillies' greatest individual season, but it doesn't stop there because we are going to have and play out the Final Four. But Steve Carlton, the greatest individual season in Phillies history, 1972. Hard to argue that one. But thank you to everybody who voted. We're going to crown a Flyers champion this weekend. We have the number 2 seed Bernie Parent from 1973-74 taking on Eric Lindros from 94-95. Bernie in 73-74 was the Vezina Trophy winner. All-Star, finished second in the Hart Trophy voting. Played in 73 games as a goalie, which is just unheard of today. 47 wins, a 93.2 save percentage, 1.89 goals against, 12 shutouts, added 12 more wins in the playoffs, kept his save percentage the same. A slight uptick in goals against, 2.02, but he was outstanding, helping lead the Flyers to their first Stanley Cup, winning his first of 2 consecutive Stanley Cup and Conn Smythe trophies. Taking on Big E, Eric Lindros, only played in 46 games that season due to the lockout, but managed to score 70 points in 46 games, 29 goals, 41 assists, was the Hart Trophy winner, also won the Pearson Trophy, all NHL, added 7 power play goals, 4 game winners, and then in the playoffs, added another 15 points as the Flyers won the division, had the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals before losing 4-2. So now it's your turn. Whose season was better? Bernie Parent in 73-74, Eric Lindros in 94-95. Get your votes in. Let me know what you're thinking. But let's crown the greatest individual season in Flyers history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, review, comment, all that other good stuff. It all helps out the algorithm. Check out our friends at Beach Caddy. Go to beachcaddy.app. If you're going to the Jersey Shore, they have a whole slew of services to make your trip easier. Use the promo code Jimbo to take 15% off your move in, move out, as well as your beach cart rental services. Great people over at Beach Caddy. All right, let me know your thoughts on Fridays with AI. What would have happened and could it have happened if the Phillies kept Roy Halladay and Cliff Lee for that 2010 season? On this day in 1980, Mike Schmidt becomes the Phillies' all-time home run leader. In 2015, Cole Hamels pitches a no-hitter in his final game as a Philadelphia Philly. He was traded a couple days later to the Texas Rangers. And then in 2009, Phillies get their 9,000th win in team history. We'll have a lot to recap next week or on Monday when we rewind the weekend. We'll have the Phillies-Yankees updates, anything from Eagles training camp, a Savannah Bananas update, all kinds of great things. Maybe, just maybe, we'll have a trade to update as well. Rest in peace to Hulk Hogan, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Like I said, one of my heroes as a kid, gone at 71, still too soon. It's going to be kind of a crappy weekend, so maybe you can catch up on some sleep, watch some Phillies, Yankees, training camp recaps, whatever you got to do. But go have yourselves a feel-good Friday. My name's Jim Montgomery, and this has been This Day in Philly Sports History for July 25th, 2025. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.